As I look around our world, I see that many, many people are so broken around me and that our world is increasingly more broken. And as our local church in Noblesville, Indiana, Grace Church, has been wrestling with that recently, we realized first that the good news of Jesus is the only solution that actually gets to both the symptoms and the causes that are deeper of our brokenness in the world. So we wanted to see God move and mobilize our people in being agents of love and of Jesus' message to people all around them. And we had to really wrestle with a couple of key things. First, we needed to decide, how do we communicate about sin in our culture and the effects of sin? And the Lord led us to this concept of the 6 broken places in our world, where we see that our world is broken because of sin in at least 6 places. First and central is the idea that we are separated from God. And as we've rebelled and rejected His leadership in our lives, we are alienated. We are separated from God. And only the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ can reunite us with God Himself. And everyone needs that. But then we also see where from that brokenness of our separation from God, there are at least 5 other areas of brokenness that we see in our world that flow from that. First, there is pain. We see pain physically with body, mind, and soul, emotional pain, physical pain. We see people around us that are caught up in cycles of injustice, of poverty or exploitation through human trafficking and other systems that really are oppressing people. We see isolation as people they're made by God for connection, but yet they're isolated, they're alone, they're lonely, they are in broken relationships, and there's deep emotional pain, and they're longing for authentic community. We see hatred in our world. That hatred seems in my lifetime to be at the highest I can recall, at least in the last 50 years. And hatred, whether it be in war and genocide, but also in racism and racial tension, ideological hatred, where we really kill each other every day with social media and our comments toward each other. And so we're in this toxic hatred kind of environment. And then also there's the decay of the planet, where we see not only because of sin's effect on our creation, that the creation itself is groaning, but also from our own exploitation. So when we look at pain and isolation and decay and injustice and hatred, we see that those are flowing from the deeper sin issue. And so as we shared that with our people, they began to see that the good news of Jesus is actually good news for both heaven and for earth right now. It's a more robust good news. And then secondly, we wanted to try to communicate, how do we help people express what does it mean to become a Christian? And we landed on the language of surrender and trust. That it's to surrender control of my life to Jesus' leadership and to trust in His life and death and resurrection. But then we also shared with them one other concept, and that was the importance of seeing that we not only have our friends that have a sin gap between them and God, but they have an evangelism gap, a credibility gap, because often there's mistrust of the local church and of Christians. There's deep hurt. They don't know a Christian personally. And so we challenged our people, who is that one person that God has put in your life for you to be invest in their lives, praying for them, and for them to be your one, so that you can help bridge that evangelism gap, that credibility gap, so that they can eventually see Jesus. We've been seeing our people actually living out the good news of Jesus with their friends all around them. And throughout many of the ministries in our church, one of them is the Care Center. The Grace Care Center serves about 500 families a week. And while we were doing a great job of giving food and helping people with financial needs and referrals, it wasn't as evangelistic as it could have been. So a team began to hang out in the waiting room as people were waiting to be served there, and asking them stories, hearing their own stories, sharing their own stories of their faith journey. And in the process, they were inviting people to consider Jesus. And in some cases, they said, would you consider walking across the hall and going from the Care Center to coming to our church? And many of them have now come from the Care Center, started attending the church, and then found Christ, began to make a commitment to Christ, and were even baptized in recent weeks. So we're very thankful to see that permeating throughout the whole church. Another example has been on our weekend services. We made the decision at the first of the year that we would have monthly baptisms where you did not have to attend a class, but you could come even that morning. And we did some public invitations, even though that seems kind of old school. We did some public invitations to begin to follow Jesus as people would respond to the message and meet with our prayer team. And then on some mornings, that morning was when they actually were baptized, or it could be the next week or two. And we saw hundreds of people be baptized. We prayed for 500 people to be baptized in 2016, and already we've seen 425 in the first half of the year. And many of those are first-time commitments to Jesus. But what's been beautiful is to see people being baptized in the context of our worship service as we're singing songs of God's mercy and God's grace and forgiveness and new life. Then people are actually being baptized simultaneously, and it's a tremendous celebration. People have even applauded and broken out in applause as people are baptized as we're singing, and we're seeing genuine life change. And it's also instilling a value for the congregation that this is what we're about, the mission of God. It's been exciting to see that as Christians are mobilized and equipped to share the love of Jesus with people in word and in action, then they are actually bringing hope and healing to our broken world.